Hello and welcome back to the channel. This is sort of day 4 of having the Carrera T. It's my last full day. Yesterday I did a lot of B-roll locally just to fill in the sort of gaps and make the videos a little bit more dynamically interesting. So really, and it was nice to get to know the car on local roads. But today I'm going to head out to the Peak District and see what we can find there. See if we can find some great driving roads and interesting backdrops and interesting countryside. So let's go. So we made it to the Peak District and I'm here enjoying the roads, which are pretty good so far. So before we talk about the driving dynamics of this Carrera T, let's talk a little bit about the history of the Carrera T. So it came out at the end of the 1960s and it was kind of a bit of a replacement for the Porsche 912, which was the 911 body with the 4-cylinder engine derived from the 356. But then Porsche decided to come out with the 911T to kind of replace the 912 but with a 6-cylinder engine, but be a cheaper, lower price base model. It was 110 horsepower and they pretty much stripped everything out that they could to bring the price down to make it the cheapest 911 that they could. So really, it's easy to compare it with the 356 Speedster, because the 356 Speedster was stripped out for cheapness rather than lightness, and the T was the same. It was stripped out to be cheap. So I don't really feel this new Carrera T is about cheapness, because it's actually more expensive, or was rather more expensive, than the standard Carrera, and also starting at £85,000, and this one with the spec that it's got is actually £100,000. I'm also not 100% sure that it's actually about lightness, because this car weighs 1500 kilograms, and some of the things that remove weight only bring it down by about 20 kilograms. So, thinking about this particular car, some of the things that I've already mentioned make me feel that this car is a particularly well-spec'd Carrera T. This has got the carbon ceramics, which I've really enjoyed. They're really confidence inspiring. They've got a great bite to them. They do squeak a little bit, which can be quite annoying, particularly if you're in an area where there are a lot of people around. On these roads, I've started to notice the advantage of the rear wheel steering as well, because in tight spaces you can really feel it turn in really tight, and I do think it does make an advantage over the 992 that I drove that didn't have rear wheel steer. So I think this 3-litre engine really is the sweet spot of this particular engine. It's got 370 horsepower, and driving it on twisty B roads like here in the Peak District, it's really all that you need. Particularly when you've got the sports exhaust button on, that sounds really, really impressive. When you change down, it blips and sort of rev matches for you, which makes you sound like a bit of a driving hero. As I mentioned, it has got Porsche active suspension management, which is switch on with a button on the steering wheel when you turn it to Sport or Sports Plus. It is a little bit jarring on some uneven and potholed roads and that kind of thing. If it's got a pretty good surface, this is a pretty good surface that we're on at the moment, so it feels pretty good. So if you were going a bit faster, you could activate it, but I definitely sort of switch it off if I was going along a road that it wasn't suitable for. So I think it's a kind of a case of pick your road where you want to use it. So another thing that makes the 991.2 Carrera T interesting is that it's not strangled by particulate filters like the 992s are these days. Something else that's been mentioned is that this is the last of the narrow-bodied 911s. I think I do love the looks of this car. I think it looks narrow on the hips. The proportions between the back and the front really look nice. It's got that sort of more traditional classic look. And I'm certainly appreciating that on these narrow Peak District roads. I have come sort of head to head with a van at one point, and I was kind of glad that I wasn't in the wider 992. So I think I'd have to agree with Henry Catchpole, although he's driven the GT cars and I haven't, but he described this car in his video when he talked about the GT cars are probably your mad friend that you meet up with once a year and do shots with. But you don't want to see them any more than that. And this car is your kind of friend that you'd be happy to see most days. And yeah, after driving it on these roads and driving it for, 4 days now, I can completely agree with that. So how would I sum up my thoughts on the Carrera T? Well, as a driver, I love the image of the Carrera T. It gives off a sense of focus and also being in the know if you own one. I think going back to what I said in the first video about whether the car is greater than the sum of its parts, like a 911 CS was, I think it is. I think it does come together and gel, but I think it does have to be spec'd properly. I think my perfect spec would be very close to this particular car. Things I don't like? Well, not very much really. I don't like the handbrake. It does have a weird sort of push-pull touch point, although I do prefer it to the automatic handbrake of the 992. I'm not massively keen on the nylon pull straps for the doors. So overall then, the Carrera T is a bit of a rare gem. They only sold around 300 in the UK, and that makes them arguably rarer than the 991 GT cars. I think the fact that this car is still on the Porsche GB fleet speaks volumes for the Carrera T. And on these Peak District roads, on Snake Pass and Winnett's Pass, it's not hard to understand why. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video series on the Carrera T. More great videos to come. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.